Joining me now is Congressman Adam Smith, Democrat of Washington State. He's the ranking Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, thank you for joining us. You just heard from Senator Blumenthal as Senate Armed Services calls for an investigation of the administration's use of the Signal messaging app. The House Armed Services Committee has called for an investigation as well. Where does that stand, and what are your thoughts on the seriousness of the matter?
Well, it's very serious, and it's not where it needs to be. The Senate Armed Services Committee is waiting for an Inspector General's report. That is the request. Look, the majority Republicans in both House and the Senate are not taking this as seriously as they should. The IG report won't be out for a while. It doesn't really hold people accountable. And let's remind everybody, we don't have an Inspector General at DOD because Trump fired the person. So it is, a more difficult job for the IG, which has been weakened in the first place. But as the senator noted, there should be a criminal investigation. This was clearly the release of sensitive information in violation of the Espionage Act. This has happened bipartisan. There have been a number of different instances like this. They've all been investigated by the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice should be involved in this, and they're ignoring it. I also think we should have a hearing in both the House and the Senate Armed Services Committee, where preferably Secretary Hegseth, but certainly somebody from the Department of Defense comes over and explains how this happened and what their policies are to fix it. Because that's the most concerning part of this. And there are many concerning parts of it. But the most concerning part is that the White House, National Security Advisor, Defense, they say, well, this is just normal business, which means that they're going to do this sort of stupid thing again. And we need to fix those policies to make sure that our secrets are, in fact, protected.
Now, while the scandal over Signal messages is playing out, Secretary Hegseth is on his first trip to the Indo-Pacific region. Traveling with him is his younger brother, Philip, who has been named a Department of Homeland Security senior advisor, a highly unusual position for cabinet member's sibling, especially given his lack of government experience. The Wall Street Journal is also reporting Hegseth brought his wife, a former Fox News producer, to sensitive meetings with foreign military officials, including the UK Secretary of Defense. Hegseth has made a big deal about getting rid of DEI in favor of Pentagon meritocracy. What do you make of these stories?
Well, I think that's the overarching problem. We need to recognize that the Signalgate controversy represents a much larger problem within the Trump administration. And that problem is simple. Trump appoints people based on loyalty to Trump, not on their experience or their ability. And this is played out across many different cabinet agencies. Secretary Hegseth was manifestly unqualified to be Secretary of Defense. He has no experience working at the Department of Defense. He has no experience running an agency of any size or leading this type of operation. And obviously, what happened with the Signalgate thing just makes that clear. I mean, anybody with an ounce of experience running these types of operations would have known that's not a conversation you have over an unsecured commercial app. But that lack of experience leads to bad choices. This is what it looks like when you have an autocratic approach to governing instead of governing based on ability, the law, the Constitution. And we see that certainly with his brother, with his wife, with the inclusion of that, with not a focus on ability, but simply a focus on loyalty to Trump and his agenda. And we're paying for that. And that's what's so ironic about the DEI argument. And look, I have seen DEI programs that haven't been great. But the idea that you should bring people in from a more diverse background so you can access the talent that is out there. That's the focus. It should be on talent. Look, they have their own DEI, and it's all about Trump people. That's the only people that they're working towards. They're not focused on merit or ability, and we saw that play out this week. But trust me, it's playing out in hundreds of other ways within the Trump administration. Not about talent, quality, and ability. It's about loyalty to Trump. And that leads to mistakes like this.
I can only imagine if the predecessor of Hegseth, Lloyd Austin, first and so far only black to serve as Secretary of Defense, had been on this kind of signal line with these kind of people talking, they would have said that's because he was DEI. So what do you call Hegseth and them? But let me ask you this. The Department the Defense Department is aiming to cut up to 60,000 civilian jobs, at least 5% of its workforce, as part of Trump's government reduction. To reach that goal, the Pentagon will have to slash about 6,000 jobs a month. Hegseth says the cuts can be done safely without impacting military readiness or pulling service members in to fill the gap. Are you confident these cuts will be executed responsibly, Congressman?
No, I mean, we've seen the cuts they've done in every other department, and none of them have been executed responsibly or with any sort of focus on efficiency or effectiveness. They've simply been randomly firing people. In many instances, after they've fired them, people have raised concerns or lawsuits have been brought, and so they've had to hire them back. And then even after they've hired them back, they've put them on paid furloughs. Nothing about this is responsible or thoughtful or moving us towards a more efficient and effective government. It's chaos, designed, by the way, to weaken the overall federal government because Donald Trump sees it as a threat. And going back to your Lloyd Austin point, let's also remember that they also fired C.Q. Brown, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Correct.
An eminent qualified senior officer who had led commands all across the world very capably, and they fired him again, a black man. They fired him out of their DEI concern so that we didn't have a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff who could have been in that conversation a week and a half ago and said, yeah, guys, I've done this before. This is not the way we do it. That's the incompetence that is brought in. So, nothing about the way Elon Musk and Donald Trump have been firing people and canceling programs across the government should give anybody any confidence that this is about making government more efficient and effective. It's about weakening our federal government to give Donald Trump more power.
Now, Republican lawmakers are feeling the heat over the administration's scandals. Take a listen to this town hall held in Indiana Republican Congresswoman Victoria Spots.
When are you going to live up to your oath, defend the Constitution, and reclaim the powers that the voters of this district have reserved for you?
Now, you've been a critic of the Democratic Party's messaging during the election. How do you think they should be responding to the clear voter dissatisfaction with the Trump administration right now?
I think that's an effective way to respond to it. I think we have to point out, number one, that Donald Trump is doing an autocratic takeover of our government, as we've discussed. Number two, he is damaging our government, damaging our economy with the decisions he's making. This is hurting real people. But number three, my criticism, and the New York Times actually had a very good editorial this morning from their ed board saying Democrats need to recognize that we have to build a reasonable alternative, and we have to recognize where we fell short. We can't just preach to the choir of the Democratic Party. We have to address the issues that the American people have with us. They are concerned about what Democrats would do to secure the border, even as they support immigration. They are concerned about what Democrats' economic policy is going to be. Is it going to stand up for the working class? They are concerned about ideological rigidity on a variety of different questions that have alienated and pushed a lot of people away from us. Look, I support the idea, as I said, of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but that doesn't mean we should be the language police and go around shaming everybody who uses the wrong words. We need to make it clear to the American people, Democratic Party, we got big problems to fix. Anyone who's running around saying, oh, well, it was close. We didn't lose by that much. No, we have a brand that is toxic in too many parts of the world. We need to fix that brand, and we need to fix our coalition, and we need to be honest enough with the American people to say, hey, we need to do better. Yes, we have to attack Trump every single day for all of the terrible things that he is doing. But if that's all we do, if we don't offer a reasonable alternative, if we don't meet the American people who have legitimate concerns about the Democratic Party halfway, it's going to be tougher to stop the terrible things that Trump is doing. That's my only point. And I don't pretend to have all the answers to that. But if we go whistling past the graveyard saying we're fine, Trump's the only problem, and we're not going to fix anything, we're not going to be as effective as we need to be.
And you say preaching to the choir. As a preacher, I can tell you even the choir has different ranges. Some baritone, some soprano. They're preaching to just part of the choir.
Yes, amen. I mean, they're true, and we got to think how to do that, how to listen to people, how to work with people. You know, it's funny. I did a town hall meeting today, and it was just by and large good. But I got to the part in my speech after condemning Trump where I said that our ideology on the left has become too rigid and it alienates too many people. And right as I'm making that point, someone who I've dealt with before, who I know doesn't like that message, literally was flipping me off from that point forward. He flipped me the bird, basically, throughout my comment. I'm like, dude, that's my point, okay? To merely suggest that maybe there are some things we could talk about to lead to that sort of visceral reaction is alienating people and pushing people out of our coalition who we should be bringing in.
All right, Congressman Adam Smith of Washington, thank you as always for joining us and your candor.